What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement on this fine college football Saturday. Now, I put together a nice little video for you guys where we're going to take a nice look at the 2022 rookie class. So we did a nice little mock draft, my top 24. And right now, I just want to make it clear. This is a brief overview. I'm not a Devy guy. I'm not in any Devy leagues, though I want to try out Devy in the offseason. So I have, a nice understanding of these guys. For all you guys out there that play NCAA, for all you guys out there that play Madden and do the franchise, I'm scouting these guys, but I would say I'm like 10 to 20% in there, right? So, I got a couple attributes shown. I kind of know what I'm looking at here, but I don't have the Dominator ratings. I don't have all the stats I want, the combine height and weight, the combine metrics, yards created, NFL.com, more mock draft data so we know draft capital. This is just a pure, overview. Just kind of want to get some tiers locked in place. We're going to do a nice little tier list here. So just to kind of, see where the players are shaking out, how to kind of value these 2020 rookie picks, moving forward. Because when you trade away, an early 2022 first and you try and go get a playoff piece, what exactly are you giving up? You know what I mean? So I wanted to hop on here, do a video like that. All the guys that are Dynasty, diehards in the comments tell me, Ron, we got to get some Dynasty content. And I'm telling you guys, I'm a man of the people, so we're going to get this Dynasty video out. But once a Super Bowl happens, fellas, from there to combine season to NFL draft season, this channel is going to be like 80 to 90% Dynasty football content. So if you're into that kind of thing, make sure you stick around, subscribe, leave a like. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
And here we are. We got the nice tier list set up here. And at the top of this draft, we have two quarterbacks that I'm really into at the top of S tier. I think that, again, these are tiers. So you can position this however you want among the top. But my one-on-one as of right now is Matt Corral. And it's pretty weird putting Matt Corral in there because I want to say I remember. I could be off. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe that QB 11, 11 on 11, it's like QB 1 or something. I want to say Justin Fields was in it. Trevor Lawrence was in it. And then you had a bunch of other quarterbacks where there was this one guy that played for Virginia Tech who I believe transferred to North Dakota State. Maybe his name's like Quincy Thompson. I want to say Matt Corral was in there and he was okay. And then through his freshman and sophomore season at Ole Miss, also okay, not a ton of buzz. He's not one of those thoroughbred prospects, but I mean, you kind of see that with a Joe Burrow, but who'd we have last year? Trevor Lawrence was always that guy. Justin Fields, always that guy. But he is kind of, a Zach Wilson, I wouldn't say he's not, he would need to have a Heisman level performance to be a Joe Burrow, but he's up there with a Zach Wilson in terms of just a late bloomer who comes out of nowhere, kind of like a Mac Jones. Now, if we're talking about last year, the 2022 draft class, he'd probably be my 104 at best. I'd probably have him behind Lawrence, Fields, Lance. I'd probably have him in the same tier of Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. So the top end of this class isn't super strong. Now, he seems to be the consensus QB1 in these early mocks. That's the other reason why I have him at 101. For a lot of these players, I'm taking into account draft capital. So I'm looking at mock drafts from Mel Kiper, splash of $7 on the ESPN Plus subscription. You hate to see it. But he seems like he's going to be a locked and loaded top 10 quarterback. He's the only one I can really say that about. All these quarterbacks are all over the place in these mocks right now. There's no consensus. There is no consensus 101, 102. Guys like Malik Willis, we'll talk about in a little bit. Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett are all over the place. Some of them are in the top 10. Some mock drafts are not even in the first round. So Matt Corral is one that I'm seeing routinely in the first round, and most of the time he's the QB1. Now he also he's a really good thrower. He's a Zach Wilson type thrower where he has a crazy arm. He's been in a ton of Ole Miss shootouts where him, Lane Kiffin throw the ball a ton. And he does have this Konami code upside as well. Now, he's not going to be a, Trey Lance like Kyler Murray, but he does average 50 rushing yards per game. He does have scrambling upside. He also has a good arm, 17 touchdowns, 2 interceptions right now. He is just a solid quarterback prospect. He probably won't go first overall in this draft, kind of like a mixed bag in terms of it kind of feels like the draft class, the last draft class we had where we didn't have a quarterback at 101, which I believe was the Mitch Trubisky draft class, where you have a lot of upside. So, you have guys like Mahomes, you have guys like Deshaun Watson, you have guys like Mitch Trubisky as well. So these guys, I think, are at the top are going to be very hit or miss, but I don't think any of them will be like that 101. I imagine the edge rusher out of Oregon, Thibodeau, will probably be the 101. So we're going to see a couple guys littered throughout like the top 10 to 15. So you have a wide range of outcomes with those guys. And the other guy I'm going to put at the 102 is another quarterback, Malik Willis. And Malik Willis, I'm very excited about. He's this quarterback out of Liberty, and he seems to be the other consensus top quarterback, right? In all of these mocks I'm seeing, it's him and it's Matt Corral in like the top 15. They're not amazing prospects. Again, neither of them are in like the Fields, Trevor Lawrence type area, but Willis is kind of I'd say that he's like a poor man's version of like a Josh Allen, Carson Wentz, Trey Lance type prospect, where they're small school guys where you just project a ton of upside because they just have like tools, right? So Malik Willis is this guy where he makes really good flashes. He has a ton of rushing upside, right? So he averages 75 rushing yards per game. He averaged 90 rushing yards per game last year. He can run the ball like a Trey Lance. The thing is that his quarterback, his throwing's like hit or miss, kind of like, a Josh Allen in his final year. People forget, if you go back and look at Josh Allen's stats at Wyoming, from a throwing standpoint, he had like under 60% completion percentage. It wasn't anything crazy. Malik Willis is in that same mold where his completion percentage isn't great. He's outside the top 50 quarterbacks in pass grade per PFF. He has a 21-9 touchdown to interception ratio. So he's not, making a mockery of this bad competition in terms of throwing, but he has the intangibles. But he also leads the NCAA in big time throw rate as the only quarterback with over 10% of his throws being big time throws. So you see the ceiling. And just given, the rushing upside of Malik Willis, if he's a top 10 pick, lock him in as a nice like 101, 102, as, he kind of reminds me of like if Jalen Hurts got like top 10 draft capital, that would be kind of Malik Willis. I think that's a decent comparison. Then we're going to have Isaiah Spiller, and I'm going to put both of these guys in here at the same time. I got to be honest with you guys. You guys are going to want me to have like firm convictions this far out. I got to be honest with you guys. The running backs go in this tier because positional value, they're both solid. They're both pretty much locks to go second round. They're both 3-year starters, both of these guys. So as Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall, these two guys right here, they are both 3-year starters. They're both projected to go in the second round. They're, to me, as a guy who does most of my research on like analytics and numbers, I don't do a ton of film watching. They are the same dude. They both have around like 30 receptions in a season. They both hover around 5 to 6 yards per carry. They've been 3-year starters. It seems like Hall is more of the bruiser and Spiller is more of the pass catcher. So that's why I do prefer Spiller by a little bit. But I'd put them I would say that they're at the bottom of this tier, but in a similar tier of prospect as Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams, these second round running backs that go and aren't like the premier running backs of their class. I'd say Spiller and Hall are in that conversation, but they're firmly behind those three. Again, they're both 3-year starters. They can catch the ball. They're both in that like 6 foot to 210 to 220 type build. So for me, the reason why I'm telling you, if you feel strongly about Hall, you feel strongly about Spiller, I don't care. If you feel so strongly in one of them that you want to put one of them at like 101, 102, though, if either of these guys go in the top 10, I wouldn't. Regardless, though, like they're both very solid, but I just need a little bit more information. I need their combine numbers. How athletic are they? Like what their actual weight is. One of these guys might come in a little bit lighter. So that'll really differentiate them going forward. But again, like these guys are, I can't stress enough how close Breece Hall and Isaiah Spiller are for me. But that is the top, that is the S tier for me right now. If any order of that is probably how the first 4 picks should go. We don't have, a Jamar Chase level prospect where a wide receiver belongs in that S tier conversation. But in A tier, the first wide receiver in A tier is going to be Treylon Burks. He's my wide receiver 1 for right now because, I feel very firm about him. I feel very firm about these next 2 wide receivers. We're going to have Treylon Burks, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson. These next 3 wide receivers are all in like a Rashad Bateman, CeeDee Lamb level of prospects. So CeeDee Lamb is really good. Bateman is really good, but they're not, Rashad Bateman level good in terms of being a prospect. But they all, very clean, look good as freshmen, looked good throughout their entire career. But I prefer Burks at 1 because he's analytically sound. He broke out as a freshman. But he has this upside of, being an A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf type guy that I love. You guys know I love my alpha wide receivers. I want those guys to be big boys. He is thick at 6'3", 225. Like, he is an alpha. Now, I will say, when we're talking about these wide receivers like 6'3", 225, or not when we're talking about 6'3", 225, but when we're talking about Treylon Burks, he does remind me of, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. This isn't a bad comparison. His profile is very similar to N'Keal Harry on paper. N'Keal Harry, though, first-round wide receiver, was very solid. That's not a bad thing. N'Keal Harry, from a prospect standpoint, was very solid. But with Treylon Burks, he broke out as a freshman, and the thing that I'm most excited about is he is 6'3", 225, but he's not just a deep threat. His ADOT is behind the 10-yard marker, and he has 8.8 yak per reception. It's like top 5 in the NCAA right now. He's a yak monster at that size, which is really, really exciting. 8.8 yards after catch per reception. Picture that from a 6'3", 225-pound man. Like, that's insane. He's routinely going in the first round of mock drafts, so I'm comfortable saying that he's going to go, like, he's a first rounder. I'm comfortable that he's going to get the draft capital that I want to see from him. I imagine that he gets picked in, like, the back end of the first, is where it seems like he's getting picked right now. Then we have Drake London, who's really interesting. He's like 6'5", he's 6'5", 210. He actually played on the USC basketball team his freshman year, which is dope. And while playing on the freshman basketball team, he also had a kind of a good breakout as a freshman. In 8 games, he had 71 yards per game and 5 touchdowns in those 8 games, playing alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown and Michael Pittman. All while also, getting ready for the basketball season. So that's pretty dang good. Now, as a sophomore, he outproduced Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was having a Blitnikoff type season this season, so this season was his 3rd season. He was going crazy. Like, pretty much was looked at as like the top wide receiver in all of college football. Problem is that he broke his ankle, or he has some kind of ankle injury, so he's done for the season. But everybody saw enough to say that, okay, Drake London should be a first-round pick. He had the top NCAA, he had the top PFF receiving grade this year. Drake London, went crazy, early breakout, good size, everything I'm looking for. Like, these wide receivers are just very clean prospects, again, in that CeeDee Lamb, Rashad Bateman type tier of prospect. And then our wide receiver 3 that also belongs in this tier, not as good from an analytical perspective, but I'm most confident out of all these guys that he goes the highest in the draft. He's the consensus wide receiver 1 in a lot of these mock drafts. I've seen him go as high as top 5 in like Mel Kiper's type stuff. So he's somebody that could get legit draft capital. He broke out as a freshman at Ohio State, again, with dogs on the field. I want to say Olave was there. What other Ohio State wide receivers must have been there? I'm trying to think on the top of my head, wide receivers that were there like 2019. I mean, that was probably like KJ Hill. I don't think that they had anybody crazy. Now, I could be wrong. Regardless, though, he has a solid profile, and his numbers aren't anything crazy, but at the same time, when you factor in all of his competition around him, I want to say the new guy this year who's been going crazy is Jackson Smith-Njigba. He looks amazing. So he's just in a packed wide receiver room, and he's routinely making plays and, doing his thing. He kind of does remind me of CeeDee Lamb at like 6 foot, 190. He's a little bit undersized, slimmer in that like Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs type mold. And he's a lock to go top 15. So he's just a solid prospect for me as well. Now, they're in a tier of their own. Those 3 are in their own tier and A tier. I love all 3 of those wide receivers. And if Treylon Burks or Drake London got like top 10 draft capital, they probably go into S tier for me. I really, really like Drake London and Treylon Burks, just from looking at their profile. And then another guy I like that's going to start off B tier is Sam Howell. And I just want to say this off the bat, is that if Sam Howell gets top 10 draft capital, he immediately is in the conversation with Malik Willis and Matt Corral. The problem is the reason why I have him in B tier isn't because of his talent. I'm projecting a lot of this with draft capital in mind, right? So if Sam Howell, I'm seeing mocks right now where he's going as high as, like top 15. But I'm seeing him most of the time. So he was left out of Mel Kiper's mock. He was left out of Jordan Reed's new mock on ESPN. Mel Kiper has him at QB5 behind Desmond Ridder right now. So draft circles really aren't high on Sam Howell. The thing is about Howell, I like him. He's been a starter since he was a freshman. He had like 30 plus touchdowns as a freshman. He's averaging 70 yards per game on the ground. Like, he's a really good quarterback. It'd be really close for me if you could tell me, okay, Sam Howell gets top 10 draft capital, he's in the case for like 101 at that point. I really like Sam Howell. Again, it's more of just a draft capital thing. So because of that uncertainty, that's where I have him for now. Is, what is this? 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107. So I have him at 108. I don't mind if he just was a first round pick, I think that he goes here. If he's a top 10 pick, he goes here. But again, in a lot of circles right now, it looks like he could be a second, third, fourth kind of guy. So there is a lot of uncertainty there. Then our next guy at the 108, 4, 7, 8. So at the 109, we have David Bell. And in a vacuum, like if we take draft capital out of it, I probably have him here. I have him ahead of Garrett Wilson, probably behind Treylon Burks and Drake London. Honestly, in a vacuum, though, I probably have him ahead of Drake London. I probably go Burks, Bell, London, but because Bell, he's not getting a lot of draft buzz right now. He is like Mel Kiper. He's like Mel Kiper's like wide receiver 8 or 9. He's a guy that could go like 3rd or 4th round. That's seriously in the conversation for David Bell. And that's what's kind of scared about him. Again, in a vacuum, I love him. He has the best freshman season of all of these guys. He has the best freshman season of all of them. He has alpha size at 6'2", 205. He's dominated every season. I like him a lot. He would be in the conversation for wide receiver 1 for me. It just comes down to draft capital. If you give him second-round draft capital, he's probably here. You give him first-round draft capital, and he might even be ahead of Treylon Burks, maybe just behind him just because Treylon Burks is such a massive man. But again, just need to see draft capital there. Then we have Kenny Pickett at the 110. Out of Pittsburgh, and he's currently Mel Kiper's QB1. He's getting a lot of top 15 buzz. He is like Kenny Pickett is the guy that is kind of getting that late rise right now, kind of like a Zach Wilson, like a Joe Burrow. The only problem I have with the Kenny Pickett is a couple things. It's one that it's not a lock yet that he even goes in the first round. He could easily be like a second round guy. You know, he's a 5th round player, or he's a 5th-year player. He doesn't have a ton of rushing upside. He looks solid. He hasn't played well until literally this year. I think that he'll probably be, at best, you know, he goes like around like pick 15 to 20 and is like a Mac Jones kind of guy. I think at worst he goes in the, you know, Jordan Love area where he's like, you know, a backup for a team in the late first, or he's like a Drew Lock second round type quarterback. So that's a lot of uncertainty there. And he doesn't have a ton of upside with the rushing, so he's not like a Jalen Hurts kind of guy. So I'll put him at 110 for now, but depending on where he goes, like Kenny Pickett has the farthest range of outcomes. If he goes top 10, then like you kind of have to put him up here. If he goes, you know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, then he could go all the way into D tier. Now at the 111, I think I'll probably hear you guys complain about this one. We have Kenneth Walker, if I could just find him. Yeah. Kenneth Walker at the 111. He's getting a lot of buzz to be like this guy. This year's Javonte Williams. He has Heisman hype. He's only a junior. He's been playing really well. Don't get me wrong. He's like the best like pure rusher in this class. I don't think it's a crazy thing to say. The problem is he's averaging 148 rushing yards per game. He's amazing in that sense, right? Problem is over his entire career, he has 445 rush attempts, only 18 career receptions. Javonte Williams was so great because he was involved as a pass catcher. He had like around like 20 receptions per year, even with Michael Carter in his backfield. The fact that Kenneth Walker isn't out here, you know, getting some pass catching in and that kind of stuff, that's what has me thinking that he's less of a Javonte Williams type prospect than I think he's more in the A.J. Dillon tier of prospect, where it's just this guy that is a nice pure runner, doesn't have a ton of running upside, and it's probably a late 2nd, you know, early 3rd round draft pick. Now, I will say, I think the NFL is going to really fall in love with Kenneth Walker because of the Heisman hype, so he could get drafted. It wouldn't shock me at all if Kenneth Walker got drafted ahead of Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall, if I'm being honest. And if that does happen, I don't think he'll get 1st round draft capital, but maybe like early 2nd, then maybe I'll move him up here. Just the lack of pass catching is what kind of scares me off of him a little bit. He's still, you know, a back end 1st round pick for me. Then to round out this tier, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't love Olave at all. He didn't break out as a freshman. He's a late declare, so he's going to be coming out as a senior. For those of you guys that don't know, like guys that the numbers show, and in the offseason I'll do plenty of videos explaining my thought process and, you know, just my process in terms of scouting wide receivers and all that. But late declares at wide receiver don't do nearly as well as early declares. You want to have the youngest player possible as well, just from like a dynasty standpoint, because they're, you know, they have more years for ascending in dynasty value. Chris Olave is also undersized at 6'1", 190. He's a lock for 1st round draft capital. Teams are going to love him. He might even be the first wide receiver taken. I don't love him personally. I think he's a fine like wide receiver 2 for a team. He kind of reminds me of 6'1", 190, kind of like a, you know, a Robbie Anderson, a DJ Chark, a Darius Slayton, like kind of that build of wide receiver, which again isn't a huge problem. I just don't think he has like the upside of a Treylon Burks. I could be like AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, if that makes sense. Now that's going to do it for that tier. Then we're moving to C tier, which is where we're going to start at 201. And I have 4 wide receivers that I like here. And it pains me to do this, but I have Jameson Williams here. And I got to be honest with you, I don't love Jameson Williams at all. We also have Jahan Dotson, which I believe this is Jahan Dotson. I don't like either of these guys at all, but let me explain that for a second. I don't like either of these guys at all because they were both zeros as freshmen. They did nothing as freshmen. Jameson Williams and Jahan Dotson. They're both undersized. Jameson is 6'2", 190. Jahan Dotson is 5'11", 184. They're both, they didn't produce early. They're undersized. I don't love them a lot, but here's the thing. Mel Kiper in these mock drafts, these early mock drafts, both have these guys as first-round wide receivers. If they get, they just look like more of locks to be at the very worst, a second-round pick. So I put them in this range. Now, I like Jameson Williams a little bit more just because he's an early declare, so he's coming out as a third-year guy, so that's at least something he has going for him. Jahan Dotson is coming out as a senior, so I'm really not even excited about it. But again, if he's a first-round pick, then he has some kind of a claim. But at number 15, so that's going to be, the 203, my favorite wide receiver past, after David Bell is George Pickens. And George Pickens, as long as he is... So I have him here for now, right? The problem is that he is an injury concern. So he tore his ACL this year. He had like a down sophomore season, but his freshman year is gorgeous. He played at Georgia. I want to say, I can't remember what it was a bowl game against Baylor where he just went off for like 15 catches, just went absolutely crazy as a true freshman. George Pickens is that guy. He's a 6'3", 200-pound receiver. He's a dog. Problem is it's been injuries. It's a health problem for him, so that might hurt his draft capital, but literally give him. So I do have concerns that just because of the medicals that he could be a third round, fourth round guy, and then at that, then I'd rather just take the first round wide receivers at that point. But if he starts getting some buzz, he kills the combine, and teams are high on him, give him literally second round draft capital, and I throw him in at wide receiver 5, right behind David Bell, right here. That's all it will take. I love George Pickens. That's all it will take. But again, the injuries, all that stuff, I'm gonna have him here for now because I could easily see a world where he's like a third or fourth round pick, just because teams don't want, they don't want to take on that risk. And I'll say the same thing about Wan'Dale Robinson. In a vacuum, I prefer George Pickens and Wan'Dale Robinson to Jameson Williams and Jahan Dotson. This guy, George Pickens, broke out as a freshman, alpha-type wide receiver. I like Wan'Dale more because he feels, or not Wan'Dale Moore, but Wan'Dale Robinson. The reason why I called him Moore is because he does remind me a lot of the Moores from last year's draft class. So Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, he's in that same, I'd say he's like a poor man's version of those prospects where he broke out as a freshman. He's had a good year this year. He's undersized though, right? So he is that he's like under 6 foot. He's an undersized guy like the Moores, but he's very analytically sound, and he's a multifaceted guy where he has 141 career rush attempts, right? So he can do it all. He's very elusive. He's, dynamic, which we did a little bit of a video series in the offseason about that, where if somebody's a beta wide receiver, right, where they are smaller, you want them to be in the mold of an Antonio Brown, a Tyreek Hill, Tyler Lockett, a Percy Harvin, where there are problems with the ball in their hand. We have a guy, I'm trying to think of guys in the league right now. I had somebody that I was going to compare him to. Man, not Deebo Samuel. But yeah, the guys in the league, you want them to just be dynamic with the, so the rookies from this class are like Kadarius Toney is a dynamic beta where you just get him the ball in space and he does crazy things with it. You want guys like that. Wan'Dale Robinson fits that mold. Again, give Wan'Dale Robinson or George Pickens second round draft capital or better, and they're ahead of Jameson Williams and Jahan Dotson, and they're probably in B tier. That's all it takes. Now, moving on for that, let me get a little water break here. It's running a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but it's all good. I hope the few sickos out there that are interested in a 2022 rookie mock draft do enjoy this. So then we got at the 205, I believe. So this is the 205, and I actually really like this kid. I just don't. He's a very interesting evaluation because I have no clue where he's getting drafted. I have no idea. But he comes out of school. I know it doesn't really matter, but like on 247, the area scout that went to his high school game or whatever said that he's going to be the next David Johnson, get drafted in like the first 2 rounds. He came out of high school as a 4-star recruit, 6'1", 220 pounds out of Michigan, We love that size. And then he was a top freshman running back as well. So he comes out, puts up 726 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. For reference, Breece Hall in his first year put up 897 yards and 9 touchdowns. So he was a dominant player as a true freshman. We love to see that. Problem is that there's no running back competition at Michigan. And in his second year, he kind of falls off the face of the earth. Now, I haven't done any digging. I don't know if it was, a personal thing, if he just played bad. But like Chris Evans was out producing him. Whatever Michigan bum running backs on that team were out producing him. He transfers to UCLA and has been playing there this year. He's been tearing it up at UCLA. He hasn't been doing anything insane, but he's looked good. I just like how his game translates because he can do everything. He's going to be 6'1", 220 pounds. We love that size. If he tears up the combine, a team could fall in love with him as he could be like an A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson type running back, and be that kind of guy. So I don't mind Charbonnet. I will say for now, I do think that he probably goes like round 3. So if he goes round 3, then he's probably here. If he's like a round 2 running back, then he can get bumped up to B tier. Now, at the 206, we have another running back. That's going to be Kyren Williams. And I really like Kyren Williams. He's pretty much in the same boat as Zach Charbonnet, where he is a guy that I think probably goes, 3rd, 4th round. He has a really solid profile. He has a better profile than Charbonnet on paper, right? So he has 35 or more receptions in his last 2 seasons. The only problem for him is size. So Zach Charbonnet, 6'1", 220 pounds, workhorse type build. Kyren Williams is 5'9", 200 pounds. So he's more in that, he's very similar to a Kenneth Gainwell, where he's undersized. He's a receiving back. He could get decent draft capital, though I know a lot of the teams are going to like Notre Dame. So if he gets that 3rd round draft capital, he could be interesting as like a Giovanni Bernard, Michael Carter type guy is kind of how I see Kyren Williams. Then at the 207, right? Yeah, so the 207, we have Carson Strong. And I don't feel, this D tier is kind of just the leftovers. I don't feel strongly about any of these guys. In terms of real life, I don't mind Carson Strong. He has 32 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio. He's a good arm. Problem is that he's a statue, like a Josh Rosen type statue. He also has, a shaky draft capital outlook. He's not a lock for the 1st round. He's Kuiper's QB8 right now. So he could just be, a Kyle Trask kind of guy. I have him this high just because he could go first. Like, the draft capital is pretty spotty, especially on these quarterbacks. Like if Carson Strong ended up going like top 15 and teams just fell in love with him as like a pocket quarterback, because I know that he does have a good arm on him, it wouldn't surprise me at all. But again, he could just be like a 3rd, 4th round guy that teams aren't high on, like a Kyle Trask. Then another quarterback, just because of the value of quarterbacks. I don't love Desmond Ridder at all. This is Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. He's not as talented as a pass catcher, but he does have some legs on him. He's a mobile pass catcher, or a mobile quarterback. He's here just because he's getting 1st round buzz in some places. Kuiper has him at QB4 ahead of Sam Howell and Carson Strong. So if he's like a back end 1st round guy, he's in that like Jordan Love type conversation. Maybe even like a Jalen Hurts kind of. Like I'm not very excited about it at all, if I'm being honest. And like Desmond Ridder just doesn't do it for me. He feels more of like I don't know. He just feels like a veteran college quarterback that just like doesn't make mistakes, I guess. He doesn't feel like an NFL quarterback to me. He feels more of like a college quarterback, but that just could be because, Cincinnati bias. Then we have Jalen Weidermeyer, which if you want to put him in C tier, if you want to put him here, completely fine. This is kind of assuming tight end premium, but not really. Now, Jalen Weidermeyer, you can make the case for either him or Trey McBride out of Colorado State as the best tight end in this class. I do think that Weidermeyer gets the draft capital. He's the guy who's routinely going in 2nd round in some of these drafts. Now, obviously, 2nd round will be all over the place, but it's all we got right now. He's 6'5", 255 pounds. Probably be a 2nd rounder. He reminds me a lot. He's pretty much the same prospect as a Pat Fryermuth. Now, Fryermuth is balling out, so you're like, oh, you mean like why would you put him all the way in D tier? Pat Fryermuth coming out of school, no one was like jumping for joy at Pat Fryermuth. He was also a late 2nd round pick. Then we have John Mechie, who I know he's like kind of like a cult favorite, where a lot of Alabama guys really like him. I know Danny over at Stock Exchange really likes John Mechie. He's interesting. I don't hate him because he has some size to him. He has some decent. He has like an alpha wide receiver build. He has some athleticism to him. I want to say he's like 6'2", 200, something like that, or like 6 foot, 200 pounds. Decent size, decent athleticism. He's going to be a early declare. Probably gets day 2 draft capital. So all that's pretty interesting. He's never done anything wild. He did break out as a sophomore last year with Devonta Smith. His only problem is that he's getting outproduced by Jameson Williams this year, which is why he's kind of falling. If he just came out here and balled out, he probably would have been a 1st round wide receiver in like the Chris Olave range. But that's where we're at with John Mechie. The other wide receiver we'll mention, which I think is really weird that he's getting buzz, man. I don't like Jalen Tolbert at all. This kid, Jalen Tolbert, he's a wide receiver out of South Alabama. He's thin, so he's like 6'3", 190, and like that, kind of like a Robbie Anderson kind of build. He's a fourth-year guy at South Alabama, but if you're counting I count years out of high school in terms of years of experience. It's his fifth year out of high school. He didn't break out until his fifth year out of high school against South Alabama type competition. I remember last year, I get a huge database together. I scout all the wide receivers. It wasn't clear yet if he was going to declare or not. He was like a fifth round. He was going to be like a day 3 guy last year out of South Alabama. It was like him and Kawan Baker. I looked at it, like I saw his profile last year, and he was going to be like an early declare, and it still wasn't anything special. For whatever reason, the media loves him, though. They all have him as like a round 2 guy. Mel Kiper has him as like a top 5 wide receiver over guys like Pickens, and they love him for some reason. Maybe he looks really good on film, and I'm talking out of my ass here. But Jalen Tolbert, I'm not a fan of, but if he gets second round draft capital, you do have to just respect him and put him as a late second round pick. And then a running back, I'm a really big fan of. So my guy last year was Jamar Jefferson. He didn't get the draft capital. He flopped the combine, whatever. But this year, my Jamar Jefferson is Rashad White, however you want to say that. Rashad White out of ASU. Really excited about this dude. He has size, so he's 6'2", 210 pounds, and he's the best receiving back in the class as of right now out of Arizona State. So he's a JUCO guy. He's going to be a senior, so he's going to be a little bit older. But he has a top receiving grade per PFF. He's the second highest rushing grade behind only Kenneth Walker. He's looked really good this year, has the size, can catch the football. His questions come down to athleticism. I don't know at all what his 40 is going to look like. And the other question I have is draft capital. He's kind of come out of nowhere. I haven't heard him as like one of the top names in the draft. He could be like around 5, 6, 7 guy. So if that happens, then we'll have another Jamar Jefferson type, guy. But regardless, I do love me some Rashad White. Now that is the draft right there, what you guys are looking at. Again, this is much more about tiers. I'm just trying to get the tiers in place. Again, I think when it's all said and done, I probably will end up putting like George Pickens ahead and whatever else here. But this is just how I feel. If you want to put Kenneth Walker at the top here and you like him as like your 108, I don't care at all. But this is just essentially my soft tiers for now. Kind of give a nice little overview. It's the mid-season of college football, so why not give, a nice little, just primer with bowl season coming up and all that. You can kind of see, who should I be looking out for as guys that I'm going to be taking in these rookie drafts, especially those guys out there that are rebuilding, don't have anything to look forward to this year. So I thought it would be a fun exercise to kind of, get myself acclimated to this draft class, kind of keep my eye on some things. I'll be doing a lot of research, in the offseason on these guys. Now, with that being said, fellas, if you want access to my rookie rankings, my dynasty rankings, all that good stuff, it's on the same exact Patreon. All that stuff that you can get, the seasonal rankings, the weekly rankings, rest of season rankings, waiver wire article, that all comes with the dynasty package. I'm telling you again, wild that I'm allowing that for $5 a month. I probably will eventually be, I think this offseason I'm going to sit down and bump that up, but I'll have anybody that's on the Patreon right now, you'll always be on that $5 a month plan. So if you want to get in, if you get in today and you just stay on that for the rest of time, you can stay on $5. Once the season ends and week 17 happens, I'll probably shut that down. I think I can archive that tier where if you're on that for $5 a month, you can keep that till the end of time, but then I'll probably make a new one where it's like $7, $8, $9 because we're doing seasonal rankings, dynasty rankings, waiver wire articles. I'm being active in the Discord, start sit stuff. Again, weekly rankings, rest of season rankings, waiver wire article, just all that stuff. It's everything. But with that being said, I love you guys. Make sure you subscribe. Have a safe Saturday. Have a fun Saturday. I'll see you guys tomorrow for our Sunday morning live stream around, probably like 11:30, 12. As always, I'll see you guys in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from misdemeanor.